Hello, everybody. Welcome to Shred's Takes. Mike Shredder here. Another episode of the podcast. Today, we're going to be doing a Western Conference playoff preview. I am honored and so excited to have back Andrew Deutser. We had a podcast back Christmas break around that period of time where we talked about just kind of things that happened after the the play-in tournament, or the in-season tournament. And we also had talked a little bit about just kind of how the league was looking at that time frame. And now we're going to talk about the Western Conference playoffs. So before we get started, Andrew, thank you again for joining the podcast again. Always a pleasure to talk hoops with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I'm excited to talk some playoff basketball.
So let's get started. The first game I want to talk about is the first series is the Lakers Nuggets. And, this is a rematch of last year's Western Conference playoffs. The Nuggets have been 9-0 against the Lakers in the last year and a half. So that's the big storyline coming in. Yeah, the Lakers did not tank and get the eighth seed. They won. They beat the Pelicans in a hard fought game, and the series definitely has a lot of interesting points to look at. What I wanted to do first is kind of get your overall thoughts. What do you think the keys are, and then I can kind of just spitball off of that, and kind of give my keys to the series. Then we can kind of discuss from there.
Yeah. I think first of all, I'm very happy that they didn't purposefully tank that game. Always think of the good karma. Um, no, I think it's gonna be a really good series. I think I'm hoping it's gonna be better than last year's, but I mean, I just think that if the Lakers were to win, you gotta have Anthony Davis and supporting cast have to outscore Jamal Murray and their supporting cast. Where if LeBron cancels out Jokic, I maybe there's a way that the Lakers can upset and have. I mean, I don't want to face the Lakers. I don't want to face LeBron in the playoffs. But I don't want to face the Nuggets in the playoffs. It should be a good series. I'm excited.
Yeah, so I guess some keys for me is we talked about this, off the air a couple days ago, was just the idea behind not double teaming Jokic and kind of living with him scoring 30, 40 points because his effective field goal percentage, Tim Legler brought this up the other day, was 64% against Anthony Davis. So he's gonna have no problem scoring against Anthony Davis just because of his size and his touch. But I think that's gonna be a big key. I think a second big key, frankly, is just how well can the Lakers shoot from three is going to be a big one just because of how streaky D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves have been this season. Those are kind of two big keys. Like, how are you going to guard Jokic and how are you going to shoot from three if you're from the Lakers standpoint? From Denver's standpoint, look, I think they're the better starting five and the better team. So they just can't really make any mental errors, and the other guys is going to have to contribute. And look, Jokic and Murray kind of have to be the same duo we've seen them be this season. What are you, based on that, what are some additional keys you're looking at, or are those kind of the same ones that you're looking at? And why do you think those, what keys do you think are just important to this series for the Lakers standpoint and from Denver?
Yeah. I mean, I think Denver has a major coaching advantage, which is going to play out where in a 7 game series, anything can happen. And it's all about the adjustments you make between games 2 and 3. I think Denver will make the better adjustments of the two if it needs to be. But yeah, I'm a proponent of if you have a guy in your team who can average a triple double, let him score as much as he wants. If he wants to score 70 and the rest of the team scores 12, that's only 82 points. You're not in today's NBA, that's a completely different discussion. But in today's NBA, that's not going to win you a basketball game. So I'm a firm believer of throw bodies, make them tired, but don't let the other guys beat you. Because like we said on the subway, Michael Porter goes 10 of 10 from three. You shake his hand, go in the locker room, and say, okay, I don't think he's going to do that again. But if he does, I'll shake his hand again because Nikola Jokic didn't beat me, which is just really? So I don't know. It's interesting. I think Austin Reeves is the kind of the X factor in the series. If he's on, pains me to say, if he's on, then the Lakers are a team that's difficult to beat. So it's going to be a good series. I think it's going to be good basketball. Are we making predictions in this game or no?
You can make a prediction if you want. Yeah, I was about to make mine, but you can go ahead.
Dude, I should have waited for you to make yours first.
I have Denver in five, to be honest with you. I just think
I'm in between 5 and 6.
yeah, which would be great to be proven wrong, but
Has
it's just
Wait, has LeBron lost in the first round yet?
yeah, he lost to
Okay.
yes, he did. He lost to the Suns in the first round
Yeah,
back
yeah.
in
While
21.
back.
Yeah.
I got Denver in 6.
All right. Yeah, I think it's interesting. The point about Reeves, is definitely a good one because he definitely is the X factor. I think D'Angelo Russell's actually the X factor for me because I think that he has a higher ceiling in how he can score. When Reeves plays well, it's usually about 18 to 22 points. Russell can get you 30 because just
Yeah.
like if he gets really streaky and he's really skilled, it's just a lot of times he's just really erratic. You watch him play, he's a very skilled basketball player. He's a good passer too. Like he does a lot of good things. Just the inconsistency is a problem I have with him. But the one thing I think is also interesting, though, I think this year's Denver team is much better defensively. And I think that's a big difference because everyone's like they're not as deep as they were last year, which is definitely true. But I think they're much better defensively than they were a year ago. What do you attribute that to? Do you attribute that to like Michael Porter Jr. has become a better defender? Because I think that's definitely one. Or do you think that they're like, because I don't think schematically they're really different than they were last year. I just think that they put more attention on being a better defensive team this year than they were a year ago.
Attention to detail, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do want to say one last thing on the Lakers. If they are going to win the series, I think the sneaky player to make that decision is Gabe Vincent. Not playing a ton, but he's been on teams to upset and make runs in playoffs, and he might create some problems for Jamal Murray. You never know.
Well, I mean, he wasn't, a big component of the finals run for the Heat last year. So I think that's definitely going to be key.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, what's interesting, I think to wrap it up though, is that the coaching matchups definitely, I think, the big difference.
Yeah.
It's just that it's not throwing any shade at Darvin Ham. It's just Michael Malone might be the best coach in the NBA. So it's just he has an adjustment for everything. And yeah, he's seen every national TV game, especially when they played the Celtics this year. The Celtics probably had the more talented team. I mean, it's close, but you probably say the Celtics on paper have a more talented team, but they out schemed them in the fourth quarter every one of those games, and that's why they beat them. That's why I have Denver winning the finals. Um, let's move over to the next game I want to talk about. Look, we're gonna obviously get into one that you and I had heated discussions about, which is the Clippers and Mavs, but I don't want to talk about that one quite yet. I want to talk about one that I think is gonna be a really interesting series, which is gonna be Phoenix versus Minnesota. And because Phoenix just recently beat the brakes off of Minnesota, and Minnesota is now bringing back Karl Anthony Towns, which will be interesting in the mix because he hasn't played in a while. But I'll go with my keys first, and then you can kind of go off it and take it any direction you want. My keys in the series is going to be how does Phoenix handle the physicality of Minnesota is going to be a big one because Jaden McDaniels is a really good defender. Throwing him on a Kevin Durant, I think, is actually a good matchup for Minnesota, especially because they're, I think, arguably the best defense in the league. I think they were the best defense in the league this year. And then I think the other major key, frankly, is who's going to win that shooting guard matchup between Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker? Because Anthony Edwards is really taken it to a new level this year. And he also has that playoff mentality. When he gets in the playoffs, he's really good. I know Booker is as well, but it's going to be who can sustain it for longer games because they both have had where they play 4 games and they average 40 and then they have a drop off, right? Like they've had that history. So it's going to be, I think that's going to be a big key. And then I actually think the third thing is can Naz Reid really be as well oiled in terms of his offensive game as he was in the regular season? Because I think if he's able to produce off the bench at a high level like he did in the regular season, I mean, I think for me, I actually have Minnesota winning the series in 7 because I just think that their physicality is gonna wear down. If I look at Phoenix the last couple of years, that's been with teams with Durant have struggled with that really physical defensive minded teams. Think about Boston with Brooklyn, and then obviously with Phoenix, like Denver, kind of like Aaron Gordon, they kind of wear them down a little bit. But again, Phoenix is offensively talented enough to win this series for sure. I just don't think they've been consistent enough. But what are your thoughts outside of that? Like, what do you think the keys to the series are, and who do you see
Well,
winning it
you know,
ultimately?
my biggest complaint about Phoenix is the lack of a true point guard.
Right, we talked about this back
As
in
the
December.
Yeah. So that's my biggest concern. And I think in the playoffs, that's where it's most important, where my beloved Houston Rockets were one game away with the true point guard from, I'll say it, winning an NBA Finals. Um, yeah, I as a Texas Longhorn, I have to say I don't think anyone can stop Kevin Durant on his day. But it's is he going to be on his day for 7 games against 5 guys who only goal is to stop him and then recover to Devin Booker and Bradley Beal? But I don't know. Allen's playing great basketball, shooting at a very high clip. My concern is I don't know if Phoenix is the defensive mindset capabilities to stop the interior of Gobert, Towns, Naz Reid, and Ant when he's going downhill. But I think it's gonna be a great series. Phoenix, if they're gonna win, they have to win the 3-point contest and win the turnover battle and try and just frustrate Gobert as much as possible and make him mentally check out because that's why he's never really successful in the playoffs. And I don't know. I think me and you both have talked that we were very against the too big system in today's NBA and how it's never worked in the playoffs and it's never going to work in this day and age. But I was watching them a couple weeks ago and I'm like that they're more than just too big. They're a really good basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
Where I know my favorite thing of if it's gonna work, it's gonna be this team. Um, yeah, I don't know. I get so high and low on Phoenix. I got 1 week where I'm like, yeah, this is why you trade for Bradley Beal and you have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Like, this is why you do it. And then it's like, this isn't a real basketball team. Like,
Yeah.
so I think it's gonna go 7-2. Kevin Durant and Devin Booker have made unreal plays in the postseason. Grayson Allen loves a big game, positively or negatively. I think defense wins championships. I got to go with Minnesota in 7 as well.
I think another thing that is interesting to note, though, is that the issue with Phoenix now, they've kind of corrected that with Royce O'Neal being, I think, actually a really good addition for them midseason because I think his experience, he actually does play defense and he can shoot. The issue, I think you laid it out though, is who are you going to put on Anthony Edwards? Like you're not, they're usually when let's say you're playing the best teams, they put Grayson Allen on like Luka or LeBron or Anthony Edwards. And no offense to Grayson Allen, I don't think he's going to shut down Anthony Edwards in a
Yeah.
7 game series. And that's not saying he's not a good defender. I just don't think he's strong enough to handle when Anthony Edwards. And Anthony Edwards also can shoot the 3 ball a lot better this year than he has in past years, which makes him really difficult to guard. And he's a better passer too. The key, though, and you mentioned it earlier, Mike Conley's leadership, I think, is going to play a huge factor in this series because of and it's not that he's going to score a lot of points, but he knows how to command an offense. He knows how to settle things down. I think, and I agree with you. Gobert has the issues of he can get checked down in a playoff series, but I do think the way this Minnesota's team is constructed defensively actually matches up pretty well with what Phoenix is going to do. And another thing, and correct me on this if I'm wrong, but Phoenix is a big mid-range jump shooting team. And my question is, can they make enough threes to win this series? The 3 stars, but Nurk is just going to have a good series too. Which
He's gonna have to really step up and play really good, not only defense but rebound and be physical.
yeah, because I mean,
Who's Minnesota's backup point guard? Is it Monty Morris?
yeah, that is who it is. Yeah, who's that? That's not a bad backup point guard.
No, that's a good backup. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like all those are kind of major keys. So I agree with you on a lot of those. I think that it's just going to be interesting to see if Phoenix can hit enough threes
Mm-hmm.
based on what we just talked about. So
Exactly.
yeah, now let's transfer over to well, I kind of want to first mention this team briefly before we get into like the big series, which is OKC. Again, the day we're recording this, it's in the morning of the day when the play-in games are happening. So at the moment, we don't know who won the West or the East yet. I will say, um, OKC is interesting because I think that Shea's terrific, Jalen Williams is terrific, Chet's really good. My problem with them is a couple of things though, is that they have no interior like strength or size. I know Chet's 7 feet, but he's a good shot blocker, but he's not strong enough where I trust him to be able to get, if Zion were healthy in a playoff series or even a Sabonis, I think they would have their way with him. Your thoughts about OKC? Because again, we don't know who their opponent yet is going to be. What are your thoughts about them? Do you think they're going to get bounced in the first round, or do you think they're capable at least of playing?
Well, the first thing is you could tell me all 10 of these West play in playoff teams were the 1 seed. I'd be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like I think the West is so deep that it's not exactly a easy, like I don't think any matchup's easy.
No,
And
I agree.
I think, will there be a sweep or a gentleman sweep? Maybe, but doesn't mean those 4 or 5 games are going to be easy for any of the team where it's like it can be. I think OKC is really, really good. I think J the guard Jalen Williams. I don't know which which one spelling that one is. I think he's fantastic. I think Shea's great. I think Chet's great. My concern with Shea in the playoffs is what everyone likes to say about James Harden when he was on the Rockets. I'm not commenting on him. Nets, Sixers, Clippers. Uh, Whistles get swallowed in the playoffs. And whistles have gotten swallowed a little secretively. They haven't really mentioned it, but little secret whistles have been swallowed after the All-Star break, which I'm a big fan of. Um, so how will he's got to be efficient now. He's going to get to the line, but he's got to be extra efficient because he's not getting extra free throw attempts. Do I think if Zion was healthy, I could say, okay, yeah, this team could struggle because he's playing great. CJ's playing great. I'm a huge, huge Brandon Ingram fan, but I think they're good enough to beat both those teams. I think they have enough. They have actually really good veteran leadership with Gordon Hayward and actually Lou Dort too, because he was on that playoff team that lost in the bubble. I mean, he's got some good experience. They're really young, really inexperienced in the playoffs, which I'm a big experience guy of like, I believe being there, seeing it, feeling it, playing it is just as valuable as like being fresh into it. Because I don't understand the you haven't done it, so you won't do it comment. I know we one of our friends mentioned that, and I like almost lost it on him in the middle of student lounge because like why can't you do it now? Like just because you haven't done it doesn't mean like so I think they can do it. It's gonna be a struggle, but I think OKC gets out of the first round. Second round, let's see matchups. Let's see who they play, and then we'll discuss. But I think they're good.
Yeah. Now let's go to the series where I think you and I have a difference in opinion who's going to win it. I think generally we're aligned. I think on everything else, but this one's look this. I'll put it this way. I think this one is going to be the best series out of all of them. I think it's going to be because I'm basing on the last couple of times that Luka and Kawhi and Paul George have matched up against each other has been obviously an incredible series. And now with Kyrie being in addition to that, I looked at the numbers today. I mean, Kyrie averaged 26 this year and Luke averaged 34. And then you have like 24 from Kawhi, 23 from Paul George. Norman Powell's really good. James Harden gave you 17 and 9 this year. It's going to be interesting. Now, if you're looking at trends, right, the Mavs were probably the hottest team at the end of the season, and the Clippers were a little bit up and down, where Ty Lue called them their identity soft in the middle of the end of the season. And so the reason I'll go why I'm going to pick the Mavs, and then you can go why Clippers
Hey, I
is
don't
go.
know if I'm taking the Clippers yet. You gotta let me think.
Oh, that was under my impression when we last talked, but I guess maybe you've changed your mind, maybe, or haven't. But I think the reason I'm picking the Mavs is for a couple reasons. I think the inconsistency of Kawhi's health is a major thing to look at because he didn't play the last couple games of the regular season, and I think it says I believe he's going to play game one, but you don't really know how he's going to be able to hold up. It's a reality. I do think the Clippers. It depends on what defensive scheme they put together. Because if they're going to put Zubats at the five, I don't think they win this series. Personally, just I think it's just going to be very hard, not just to guard Luka, because Luka I think is going to have his way, and with he just has with Paul George and Kawhi for how good defenders those guys are. They have slipped a little bit where I don't think they're as good as they were a couple years ago, just based on I think the defensive efficiency of the Clippers has not been where I expected it to be. So I think Luka and Kyrie are going to have their way. I think the key actually for me is I think Daniel Gafford's going to be a big key in this series. And I think people don't talk about him enough. And the
Hmm.
reason why I say that is because his athleticism, his energy, if that and the Clippers have an issue with they don't always match that well. And I also think another big thing though is, which Clippers team are we going to get? Are we going to get the ball moving, flowing offense where everyone kind of feels involved, or are we going to get the three superstars dribbling the air out of the basketball and taking really tough contested mid-range and threes, right? The last key point for me about why I think Dallas is going to win is I think that